When I collapsed at work, the doctors called my parents. They never came. 3 days later, still hooked to machines, I opened my phone and saw what they'd been doing. Instead, my sister's smiling face tagged me under a photo, "Family Day without the drama." The caption burned more than the IV in my arm. I didn't text. I didn't cry. I just watched the likes climb, wondering when family stopped meaning love and started meaning performance. Then 4 days later, 74 missed calls appeared on my screen and one message from Dad, "We need you." That's when everything changed, just not the way they expected. I used to believe exhaustion was just part of being dependable. At Green Tech, deadlines were tight projects, endless, and somehow I was always the one who stayed late, the one who made things happen. My coworkers said I had the kind of discipline that scared them. They didn't know it wasn't drive, it was survival. Because every hour I worked wasn't just for me. It was for the people waiting at home to be rescued again. My dad, Robert, had been out of work since the housing crash. He called it temporary, but 7 years felt permanent. My mom, Elena, said he just needed time, but what he really needed was someone else's paycheck. Mine. My sister Marissa, our family's influencer, was always launching something new. A wellness brand, a podcast, a candle line. Each failed faster than the last. My support often came through quick transfers labeled help or just this month. And Peyton, the youngest, still in design school, liked to play the peacekeeper. She never argued, she just borrowed quietly and forgot loudly. From the outside, we looked perfect. A smiling family in holiday photos, all matching sweaters and fake laughter. Online, Marissa called us the Miller's proof that love is everything. She posted that right after I'd paid Mom's car insurance and covered the mortgage's late fee. Love apparently had a balance due. Grandpa Joe was the only one who ever saw through it. He'd been a law firm accountant for 40 years and could read people like spreadsheets. "You can't audit love," he once told me, "but you'll know when the numbers stop adding up." He warned me gently that my parents had started seeing me as the fallback plan. I didn't want to believe him. I was raised to think loyalty fixed everything. So I kept fixing. I paid what I shouldn't, smiled when I shouldn't. The truth is, I was scared to stop, scared that if I ever said no, they'd finally show me what love was really worth. The night before I collapsed, I was still in the office at 10 p.m., staring at blueprints I couldn't even focus on. My chest had been tightening for weeks, my vision fading at the edges. I thought it was stress. It wasn't. But even then, as I packed up my laptop, my phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Can you cover my rent? Promise I'll pay you back next month." I typed a reply, then deleted it. Then typed again. Sure. That was the last message I sent before the floor came up to meet me. The hospital lights were too white, too clean, like they were trying to erase what had happened. When I opened my eyes, everything was blurred. The ceiling tiles, the IV lines, the nurse asking if I knew where I was. I didn't answer right away. I was still trying to remember what day it was. My phone was dead. My chest ached. The monitor beside me beeped softly, keeping time with something fragile inside me. When a doctor finally explained, his voice was calm but distant. "Cardiac event. You were lucky your coworker acted fast. Lucky." That word stung. Because luck shouldn't be what kept me alive. Love should have done that. They told me they'd called my emergency contacts, my parents, but no one had answered. We left several messages the nurse added carefully, like she was afraid the truth might hurt more than the IV needle in my arm. Hours passed. No calls, no visits, nothing. I watched sunlight crawl across the wall until it disappeared again. On the third day, the nurse wheeled in my phone, fully charged. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The first thing I saw wasn't a missed call or a text. It was a notification you've been tagged in a post by an official account. My fingers trembled as I tapped it open. The picture loaded slowly, sunlight, lake water, my family smiling around a picnic table, my mom holding her deviled eggs, my dad beer in hand, Peyton flashing peace signs beside Marissa, whose caption glowed beneath their perfect faces, "Family Day without the drama." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The beeping from the monitor spiked, matching my pulse. The irony was almost poetic. They had erased me while pretending to celebrate family. I zoomed in on their faces, smiling, relaxed, carefree. No one looked guilty. No one looked like they were missing me. A nurse passed by and asked if I needed anything. I said no. I think I've had enough. I didn't comment, didn't call, didn't even text. I just stared until the phone dimmed, and my reflection looked back at me, pale, tired, but suddenly calm. That kind of calm that doesn't come from peace. It comes from clarity. By the fourth day, I started walking again, slow and unsteady, dragging the IV pole, like a second shadow. The doctor said recovery would take weeks. He didn't know it wouldn't just be my heart that needed healing. Then one morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. 74 missed calls. A text from Dad. "We need you. Answer immediately. No, how are you?" No apology. Just urgency. Command. Panic. I read it once. Then again. The absurdity almost made me laugh. They ignored me when I needed them most, and now they were demanding I save them. But I didn't call back. Not this time. Instead, I scrolled to another contact. Grandpa Joe. My thumb hovered over his name, the only one that still meant safety. When I pressed call, he answered on the second ring. I heard he said quietly, "You don't have to explain." That was the first time in years someone had spoken to me like I mattered. Grandpa Joe showed up 40 minutes later, still wearing his old brown windbreaker and that expression that never gave anything away. He didn't hug me. He never was the hugging type. But he sat down beside my hospital bed like he'd been doing it his whole life. So he said, glancing at the monitor beside me, "They finally broke you, huh?" I smiled barely. "Guess so." He didn't ask for details. He already knew. That was his way, silent surgical understanding. He stayed the entire day talking to my nurse, making sure my insurance covered what it should. When the billing clerk mentioned a few unpaid balances, he didn't flinch. He pulled out his tablet and began typing. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Taking stock," he said. "Before you start cutting cords, you need to know where they all lead. We went through everything. My checking accounts, my automatic transfers, the car insurance payments, the credit card joint lines." My stomach turned as the list grew. Every week, money left my account like slow bleeding. Marissa's loan, Peyton's rent, Mom's car, even a utilities payment under my name for a house I hadn't lived in since college. "How did I let this happen?" I whispered. "You thought it was love," he said simply. "They thought it was obligation." Different math. That night, while the machines hummed and the hospital went quiet, Grandpa Joe showed me how to shut them off one by one. Not out of spite, but self-preservation. He drafted a spreadsheet, wrote out every recurring payment, and handed it to me like a map out of hell. Tomorrow, he said, we start with the bank. I didn't sleep much. I kept seeing that photo, their smiles, the sunlight, and hearing the faint beep of the monitor like a countdown. The next morning, I called my bank from the hospital. The clerk recognized my voice. I'd been the reliable one for years. By noon, the auto transfers were gone. Marissa's account canceled. Peyton's rent deposit stopped. Mom's insurance removed. Each click felt like breathing again. By evening, the phone started buzzing. First text from Mom. "We just heard what happened. Why didn't you tell us?" Then Peyton. "Can we talk? It's all a misunderstanding." I ignored them all. Grandpa Joe sat beside me, reading the paper, pretending not to watch. "You feel guilty yet?" he asked finally. "Yeah," I admitted. "A little. That'll pass," he said, folding the newspaper. "Guilt's the tax good people pay before freedom." The next day I left the hospital. Grandpa Joe drove me home. My apartment felt smaller than I remembered, like the walls were listening. I silenced my phone, unplugged it, and stared out the window for a long time. Then a vibration. Another message from Dad. "This is serious. Call me now. Everything is falling apart." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. They'd mistaken my silence for surrender. They didn't know silence was the sound of me taking back control. 2 days later, I was back at Grandpa Joe's place in Portland, a small one-story house that smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. He'd cleared the dining table, spreading out files like a general preparing for war. The afternoon sun slanted across stacks of papers, payment histories, account statements, insurance letters, my financial fingerprints, across years of quiet enabling. "Every story leaves a paper trail," he said. "Yours just happens to be in dollars." He wasn't wrong. By the time we finished, the picture was clear I hadn't just helped them. I had been financing the illusion of their stability. Without my income, everything they'd built, the image, the comfort, the control, would collapse. And it did. The calls doubled. My voicemail filled with my mother's careful voice, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. "Ava, honey, we didn't know you were in the hospital. Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Then softer, almost a whisper. "Your father's worried about the mortgage again." Worried, not sorry. Marissa's texts came next, screenshots of her empty account, dramatic crying emojis, and one message that read, "If you don't fix this, I'll lose everything." I stared at it for a long time before replying with a single word, "Good." Then came Peyton's attempt. "I'm not like them," she wrote. "Please don't punish me for their mistakes." I almost laughed. She'd said the same thing when I'd co-signed her lease last year. Grandpa Joe was watching me scroll the corner of his mouth, twitching like he'd seen this movie before. "They're not calling because they care," he said. "They're calling because they're cornered." He was right again. The next morning, a car idled outside my apartment building. Robert Miller, my father, sitting in the driver's seat, staring up at my window. He didn't text. He didn't come up. Just waited, like a debt collector, waiting for confession. I didn't go down. That afternoon, a new message arrived. "You're about to destroy everything we built." "I hope you understand the damage you're causing." Everything we built. I read it twice out loud just to taste the absurdity of it. I showed it to Grandpa Joe. He just nodded. That sentence says more than he ever meant it to. And then came the video. Marissa uploaded it that night, a slow, emotional walkthrough of our childhood home now empty. The camera panned across bare walls and scattered boxes, her voice trembling. They took everything she said. And guess who let them? The video cut to a photo of me smiling, cropped from a family Christmas years ago. The caption, "Sometimes blood doesn't mean family." The comments exploded: sympathy, pity, judgment. Influencers reposted it. My inbox filled with strangers calling me ungrateful. Grandpa Joe watched the whole thing in silence, then stood up, pulled his phone from his pocket, and made 3 calls. Within 48 hours, we had every document: mortgage papers, loan defaults, late fees. They'd used the house equity to pay off Marissa's credit cards and Peyton's business venture, a boutique candle studio that never opened. I didn't even have to expose them. The math did it for me. Still, I filed the fraud report. Grandpa Joe and his lawyer, Mr. Klein, helped prepare a cease and desist order. No contact, no impersonation, no financial claims. We sent it through certified mail, 1 to each of them. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing relentlessly. Peyton's face lit up my screen through the peephole downstairs, arguing with building security. She hadn't been on the approved visitor list. I saw her pacing outside, phone to her ear, probably calling Marissa. I didn't go out. Later, Grandpa Joe showed up again, holding a thick manila envelope. "They've done something stupid," he said. Inside were printed emails exchanges between my parents and a small law firm. I scanned the text once, then twice. They were looking into legal guardianship. Over me. I read the header out loud: emergency petition for temporary conservatorship. Grandpa Joe sighed. "They tried this before with your uncle years ago. Didn't work then either. But this time it could have. If I hadn't already moved everything under the trust he'd created. If my doctor hadn't written statements verifying my stability. If my HR department hadn't sent confirmation I was on medical leave, not termination. By the time they filed, our preemptive paperwork had already hit the courthouse. Their motion was dead on arrival. Still, they didn't stop. Marissa posted again, this time in tears. Her mascara ran down her cheeks as she spoke into the camera. "Mental illness doesn't always look like what you expect," she said. "Sometimes the people you love push you away. We're just trying to help her before it's too late." Her followers flooded the comments with sympathy. And "Pray for Ava" started trending. But social media has a short memory and an even shorter fuse. Someone found her old family day without the drama post and stitched it beside her crying video. "So where was that concern when she was in the hospital?" the caption read. The tide turned overnight. Screenshots surfaced Marissa's brand deals, her sponsored posts during the week I was hospitalized, her tweets mocking toxic siblings. Peyton's Etsy page was bombarded with comments. My father's brokerage clients pulled out. Even my mother's Facebook was filled with strangers demanding answers. By Friday, the family's online empire had collapsed faster than their finances. Grandpa Joe handed me his coffee mug. "You didn't have to lift a finger," he said. The truth handled itself. That night, a single text arrived from my mother. "Please, can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I locked the screen and set it face down. Across the room, Grandpa Joe was reading. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Just done." But they weren't. The next morning, a courier delivered another envelope. This one wasn't from their lawyer, it was from my father himself. A handwritten will. He'd rewritten it the week after the conservatorship failed. In shaky pen, it read, "In the event of my death, all assets go to the remaining family who maintain unity. Ava is disinherited until she reconciles." I couldn't help laughing. It was the same manipulation, just wrapped in formal ink. I showed it to Grandpa Joe. "They still think I want something." He smiled faintly. "They're not used to someone walking away before the money." That evening, I wrote my final reply not through texts, not online, but through my attorney. It was short, precise, and final. "I waive all rights to the estate and request permanent no contact." I signed it, sealed it, and handed it to Grandpa Joe. "File it Monday," I said. He nodded. "What will you do now?" I looked toward the window. Outside, the rain was clearing. "I think I'll rest," I said, "maybe somewhere quieter." For the first time in years, I meant it. 2 weeks later, the rain finally stopped. Grandpa Joe and I packed what little I cared to keep, one suitcase, my laptop, and a few photos that still felt like mine, and drove east toward Colorado. He said he wanted to see the mountains again before winter. I didn't argue. I just watched the highway blur mile after mile, the world finally quiet. The cabin we rented sat near a ridge lined with pine trees. No noise, no traffic, no family, just silence, clean and honest. I worked remotely for Green Tech, now fewer hours, no pressure. My days started with black coffee and ended with the sound of the wind scraping the roof. Sometimes I'd still get messages, a cousin asking what really happened, a stranger saying they read the posts online. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Let them believe whatever version made sense to them. My truth didn't need witnesses anymore. Grandpa Joe would sit by the window, newspaper in hand, pretending not to watch me breathe easier. "You did it," he said one morning. "You broke the cycle." I smiled. "It only cost everything." He chuckled softly. "That's the discount price." And he was right, because what I gained was worth more than all the apologies, all the inheritances, all the forced family photos combined. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the provider, the fixer, or the daughter who owed everyone. I was just Ava, alive, unowned, and finally free. I used to think silence meant defeat, that walking away was the same as giving up. But now, I know silence can be a choice, a border, a kind of peace that doesn't need anyone's permission. My family still tries to reach out through other people testing if I'll break the quiet. I never do. Some stories don't need new chapters. They just need to end. If you've ever been called selfish for finally putting yourself first, I hope this reminds you, choosing peace isn't betrayal. It's survival. They can keep their posts, their pity, their version of the truth. I'll keep my stillness, my laughter, my life. If you've ever had to walk away from your own blood to heal, share your story below. You're not alone.